Hi, Coach Day.
What's going on, Jamie?
Just want to say thank you again for doing this. I really appreciate it.
No problem, man. I'm excited.
So at this point, I feel like I've known you in two capacities, once as an athlete and the second time around as a coach. So that leads to my first question. Was that the biggest waste of 750 an hour in the history of strength and conditioning?
Oh man. Oh man. I mean, Jamie, it was fun having you as an athlete. You were a piss strong guy, but and you were a great coach too. I'd love to get you back. So
So like I says, I've known you in two capacities now, but for those that don't know anything about you, can you tell us a bit about yourself, please?
yeah, I'm currently the head strength conditioning coach at Robert Morris University, located in Pittsburgh, PA. Division One athletics. I primarily work with football, volleyball, women's basketball, and oversee the entire department through and through. So all the teams fall under me from there. I came from Shippensburg University, where I worked with Jamie at. Oversaw all 20 teams as head strength coach there, and kind of I'll backtrack through a lot of different schools, but I mean I've been ahead since I've been 23. I got really lucky, kind of getting out, and when I graduated from college, and um, I graduated from the University of Lynchburg. That's what it is now, down in Lynchburg, Virginia. Played lacrosse down there, and really didn't know what I wanted to do, and honestly got really lucky and fell into this career path. No lie. I mean, I didn't know what the hell I wanted to do. I had an idea and um, thought it was more private sector work. I had no idea what college strength conditioning was, zero idea. I didn't have a college strength coach, so it just was foreign to me. And I got an internship at a place called Summit Sports in Villanova, PA, back in Philadelphia, where I grew up. And from there, I went back to school. We actually had a first strength coach, started working with him at the college level, but um, got a job right out of college working at the same place at Summit. So I was like, all right, this is what it is. This is what I do, and this is what strength and conditioning is. And I kind of thought that that's what I wanted to do. Like that's the epitome. We had some professional athletes training out of there, and I thought that was cool and fun, and that was going to be my career. And it wasn't. And I got really lucky, man. Um, I'm not gonna lie, man. A job popped up, and my mom was like, "Hey, why don't you apply for this job? You meet the minimum criteria." It was head strength conditioning coach at a place called Rosemont College, and I said, "Sure, why not? I mean, what could it hurt?" So, thank you, mom, and got the job at Rosemont College. It was a school that went from being an all girls school to a co-ed school 2 years prior to getting there. No more than 800 kids, and I took over everything at that program. Um, from there, I started coaching some college lacrosse as well. Played collegiately, wanted to coach, loved the sport, and wasn't sure where my career path was going to take me. So I was the head strength coach there, and I was assistant lacrosse coach there, and that actually got me a coaching job, coaching lacrosse at Albright College. Paid more money, which wasn't a lot. I got and did some strength conditioning at Albright, and I was more of a lacrosse coach there. And um, at Albright, I fell into the interim head lacrosse coach title. So I've been a sport coach, and I ended up having to take over the lacrosse program, not the strength program, but lacrosse program over there. And they ended up bringing in another guy. So they told me I wouldn't be retained or if he didn't want me. So I found another job, got a job working again as a lacrosse coach at York College. They didn't have strength coaches over there. So I pretty much, we started the program from scratch. They had two sport coaches over there that did it, but they didn't really have a background in it. And I did. So I ran with it. York was great. I got to coach lacrosse and I got to coach a bunch of other teams in the weight room. Um, and it was a great time. And at that point, I really figured out strength conditioning was my career path. So um, previously did an internship at Villanova when I was at Rosemont, and called back up my guy at Villanova and asked to come back to Nova. So I went back to Nova that summer, knowing that I needed to get some more experience. And he was happy enough to take me back on board. And ironically enough, as soon as my season ended for lacrosse, I started my internship at Nova and got a call up for a job I applied for in Millersville, and I got the head football strength conditioning job at Millersville D2. And from there, I continued to kind of bounce around. From Millersville, I went to Shippensburg. I did a few other internships. I interned at Mount St. Mary's while I was at Ship. I interned at UDale while I was at Ship. And, I've been a bunch of different places, and I continue to hopefully grow in this field.
Loads of experience. Was it Rosemont or Albright that had the leaky roof?
Oh, that was Rosemont. Rosemont, man, was so unique. Every kid there, and I'm not gonna. I love Rosemont, so I'm gonna start with that, and it's where I was given my career start there. But their athletic department is very very small, and the student body is very small, and the teams are very small, like very small. I had 55 guys on my lacrosse team; they could barely field 22, and I mean we would play 23. So you get some injuries, and they got nobody's. Just they're getting down to bare bones. So you'd have kids playing three different sports, like a small high school at the college level there. So they never have an off season. The weight room was this dinky thing. You shared it with the general public. It was carpeted. I had broken treadmills. I had missing dumbbells, broken med balls, one rack, double-sided half rack for all my varsity teams, along with the general public, a Smith machine, just random equipment. Like we're lucky enough to be attached to the basketball courts. We do a lot of work on the basketball courts, sprints, jumps, stuff like that, warm up out there. But it was interesting. And the point Jamie's referencing is, man, in February, and I could dig up the video. Walked into my weight room one day. We had an ice storm, and a goddamn tree fell in the freaking weight room, hole right through the freaking roof, right on top of the only rack I had in that weight room. Destroyed the platform, poured all over it. I had to cut my 1,000 square foot weight room in half, find a way to train the athletes, and I didn't know any better, so we did. Little bud.
Fortunately, you're resourceful.
It made me a better coach, so I can't, I got to thank Rosemont for that.
Speaking of becoming a better coach, is there any particular individuals that have strongly influenced you within your career?
I've had a lot in here, Bubs. Again, I got my son here with me, so yeah, bud.
Hey, pal.
There you go. I mean, you always get started. I mean, in terms of coaching, the first coach you really ever have is your parents, and my parents did a really good job coaching me, and just teaching me the type of values that I think really anybody in any career path, would need to be successful. So, but outside of that, man, there's a really good book by Joe Earlman. Oh God, yeah, I'm drawing a blank. What the hell's the book called? Come here, bud. Let's check for the book. It's about transactional and transformational coaches. Oh God. But pretty much the premises of the book is there's two different types of coaches. There's really good ones and there's really bad ones. And you're going to kind of be a little bit of both. And, since a young age, man, I've had really, really, really good coaches and very few bad coaches. And I've had more people that have cared more about me as a person than an athlete, which has allowed me to develop and obviously make this in your career path, or else I wouldn't be here. In grade school, I had great football coaches growing up. At high school, I had, the late great Jim Algio was a great football coach. It was always about faith family football. It was more than just playing the game. College, man, Coach Kudelka, my college lacrosse coach. Again, it was about being a man and everything that you did, and it was more than the game and about how you'd grow up. So I've had great coaches from a mindset standpoint of how to approach this career path and how I should do things. And then, I mean, within the field and kind of, big influences in terms of strength and conditioning. I mean, Jake Cox has been the biggest one. Jake is currently out of the field. He was my mentor at Villanova, both stints there. And I just talked to him the other day, doing well. He's going to move to Vietnam and he kind of live the best life. But I mean, he moved on to Baylor from there, was the associate director of football strength and conditioning at Baylor. And I mean, from how I operate and do things on a daily basis, how I think, how I attack workouts and try to organize things, that was all, him and the way I view things. I mean, hell, even the weight cards that I still use, tweaked and adapted and modified, or, some of the things that he showed us and taught us and allowed us to develop and learn. So he was a big one. Mike Saraceno, also at Villanova, man, and he taught us a lot more about, how to work with Olympic sports. Jake was really good with football. Cena was very good with a lot of other teams and how to be a chameleon. So Mike Saraceno kind of, when you got women's lax and then you got men's lax, are two different cultures at that school. Adapt, adjust, and then be able to coach to be able to get the most out of the athletes. Same thing with softball and then soccer. I mean, it constantly changed, and you could see him change and still get the most out of the athletes. So that was pretty big. I'd say, I mean, from the standpoint, they're both two really big ones, man. I was really blessed to work under Brandon O'Leary, who's now at George Washington men's basketball. Learned a lot from him, and same with Chris Stewart at University of Delaware. Both taught me a lot as well. But when I was really getting into the field, man, um, those I'm a big believer that your first internship is always the most important one. So I do believe that Jake and Cena were the two biggest in developing me as a coach in this career.
I mean, that's definitely why I'm grateful that like my first internship or coaching experience came under yourself, because you've influenced a lot of what I do right now. And speaking of which, one thing I like about the way you do your programming is that you kind of program differently for your more or better trained athletes than you do for your freshmen or incomers. Can you explain to me why that's important?
I mean, training age is real, man. Like, you're going to get guys that know how to move, and you're going to get guys that don't. And if they don't know how to move, they're going to set themselves up for failure. I mean, we're working with athletes, and at the end of the day, they don't play barbells. They play their sport. So if they don't move well, they're more likely to get hurt. If they're more likely to get hurt on your time, they're not available, they're not accessible. They're not going to get better. They're not going to develop with you or with the sport coach. So everybody's pissed. They're pissed. I'm pissed. Sport coach is pissed. Mom and dad is pissed. So tiering a program for your athletes, even if it's just one layer, your freshmen to vets, I think is imperative. And the foundation, like, I'll use football here, Robert Morris, but I do this again with volleyball and women's basketball. We'll have different tiers to it as well. First phase would be ground zero, and this is what we call it. It's, do they have the general physical preparedness to be able to physically do the work? Are they in shape enough? And then, body weight movements, can they handle and sustain movements and just have the correct work capacity? So that's a big one. Usually that lasts anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks. And then the next one's foundational, which, depending on how much time you have with the athletes, as I get going here, I might have to stop my kid. He's digging through a bag here. So, but foundational is there's the next big tier. That's just teaching the athletes fundamental movements, how to move appropriately. So your squat, your hinge, your press, your pull, that's your upper lower. And we're talking about vertical pressing, upper body, horizontal pressing, upper body. We're talking about vertical and horizontal pulling, upper body. And then any type of core work. And you were talking about bracing, lateral flexion, anti-extension. I mean, you name it, working on the inner unit, touching on all those different little things to make sure that the athlete is fundamentally set up for success. That way, when you really start loading the barbell and advancing the movements, they're proficient, and then they can start building off of what they already know. It's no different than sometimes what sport coaches do. The better sport coaches do it. If an athlete struggles to piece together X, Y, and Z, they'll break it up into smaller pieces, into the simplest piece, and then they'll start to add to it. So I don't think it's anything crazy. I do think it's imperative to the athlete's development. When we're looking at football, the foundational phase will last sometime through early training camp all the way through the end of the season. And the reason we don't start in the summer is because our athletes are here voluntarily, and we don't have the scholarship forms. If I could, they would start in the summer. So that would give me even more time, and I wouldn't speed up the process. I would actually make the foundational program longer. I just don't think it hurts them to go through it. Going into their freshman off season, so the spring semester, every single freshman will bump into a developmental phase. At that point, we're trying to develop relative strength. Can we get them strong? We'll have some vets that are in that program too that just, no offense to them, that they move poorly or they're weak. And I'm not going to be the first guy to say that every single one of my athletes is the best mover. They are athletes first and foremost. So that doesn't mean that they're all the best. But I do like to think that they do move very proficiently and safely. So some of the vets will stay down and hopefully advance up, and the freshmen will do the same thing too. And the goal is just to develop that relative strength base. That'll kind of curve them through this summer. And I'm talking about freshmen here. So this is the maturation from freshmen the entire way through. It'll take them through their summer here, where we try to develop like an absolute strength base into the season. We're working on power and speed. And then again, we hit the off season again. So now you're looking at a let's say ideally it's a redshirt freshman or a sophomore academically. in their spring semester. And at this point, again, you're trying to develop absolute strength, trying to go back at that once again from the summer. And then in the summer of their sophomore year, redshirt freshman year, you're looking to develop some absolute power and go into the semester. You're in season, absolute power and speed throughout the semester, and just kind of maintain that and keep the athletes healthy there. And you tier it. That would be an advanced program, or excuse me, a team program. Then we go into our advanced program where things start to get a little fun. That's where you might start doing some velocity-based training and some conjugate training with the athletes. And really playing with some things of developing just absolute power and speed. That's really where you're trying to get the athletes to. And then the very few, if they're a red shirt, and they're going into that last year, you might get another fourth off season with them. I mean, and they're an elite guy. You're looking at a cat that might be getting drafted or just absolutely a freak in the weight room. You might put them on an elite program where you're truly just working on speed. You really start to cut back on some. We all have like Olympic lifts. You start to cut back on some of the Olympic lifts. You start doing some more bare bones there, and start doing some more just some more athletically based challenging movements to challenge the athlete that is very capable of it. If we had Omega Waves, it'd be something where we train them on those, depending on how they felt for the given day, just because that's where that athlete is. So at the end of the day, it'd be nice to have a whole team of cats on that program. But again, you're going to get probably a handful, especially at the FCS level, maybe at some of the higher levels, the FBS, the Power Fives, you might get some more cats at that level. So, but again, it's having that concept where you're trying to develop the athlete holistically over the duration of their career. You're trying to make the most out of it. You're trying to maximize their athletic potential. Everybody has, a ceiling to a certain degree, but it doesn't mean that, your ceiling's low. We can continue to push it and get the athletes to where they hopefully can feel like they're competing and being at the best they possibly were.
So you mentioned there that the later stages of those of their development, that if they're an absolute beast, they can kind of go to that advanced stage quite quickly or more quickly than their peers. Does this ever happen at the earlier stages at Ground Zero?
So okay, a couple things here. You'll see some cats like we just had a freshman smash weight. Like I could put him up a program. I'm not going to. There's no point to. He's gonna have his years here unless he transfers on us. He's gonna have his years here. So we'll continue to develop him. We have a plan for him, which is pretty cool. And I think at the end of the day, that's only going to aid him when he does get to a more advanced program. There's also athletes that get injured. I mean, if I have an athlete coming off a surgery, say that they're on an advanced program, man, I'm not going to keep them there. I'm going to regress them. Big part of the developmental program is we'll do a lot of tempo work. So a lot of eccentrics and isos. And I mean, that's going to drastically help some of our injured athletes just return to play. Or we can kind of say they're cleared to train. They might not be cleared for sport, or maybe they are cleared to play their sport, but they still aren't truly back yet, but they're back according to X, Y, and Z. Those athletes will go back on that developmental program just to kind of catch them back up again. And depending on, usually about halfway through, we evaluate where they're at, and we might bump them back up again, or maybe keep them back in the program for the entire semester and bump them back up later on, and just see where they are after 6 to 8 weeks of training is really the big thing. So you have your injured athletes that always bump back down, and we'll try to bump them back up. And then you have some of the younger guys that obviously are more advanced than not. And, at certain points, sometimes some of the vets, I do a lot of, so we're going to use squat and bench and overall their totals between the two. And I'm going to try to figure out a way that I'm going to add clean into it too, like a power clean, to see where that tapers in, with like an absolute number to be able to tier them up the levels, as well as one that works with their relative body, strength to weight ratio. Come here, bud. What's the matter? So that's going to be how they tier up the process and go back down. So again, if I put a guy in the developmental program that was advanced, and they get back into it, and the week 1 and 2 they're hurting, week 3, 4 they're feeling better, but there's they're kind of getting back in the swing of things. 5, 6 you might start seeing them smash weight. They're trying to get back to themselves again, and you might be like, all right, I can bump them back up. They're looking pretty good.
Nice. So In your experience, when an athlete goes from playing high school sports and they make the transition to full-time collegiate sport, what are the common physical discrepancies in those athletes?
It's vast. Um, I mean, your high school athletes, man, like every single one of them are different. Just like your college, I mean, that's where they come. They're all so different, man. Like, depending on the sport that they play, and even that doesn't matter. But you know, in America, obviously, football is your predominant sport, and training usually goes hand in hand with it. And you'd still be surprised how many guys don't know how to train or don't have a good strength program. And I'm not trying to knock a lot of high school strength coaches. I think a lot of them do a really good job, and you can tell it. I mean, we got cats. We use these guys here. I had a cat from St. Ed's. They do a great job up at St. Ed's in Cleveland, Ohio. I mean, the cat moves awesome. He's a guy that we could bump up if we want. He's that strong and he moves that well. And then you have other guys that, you know, they've always gotten by on just their raw athleticism or strength or whatever else, and they move terrible. Sometimes they even come from good strength programs. It's just again how much time do they put into it. So you're going to get such a wide variety. I got volleyball. Volleyball usually trains pretty big in there. You know, it's funny. I'm going to say this. Maybe he's listening, maybe not. But my volleyball coach is like, yeah, with these three girls, you know, two of them are going to be really well trained. And I'd say that the three of them we first got in here, I regretted what I implemented and regressed it immediately. And that's not, it's not a knock on them. It's just, it is what it is. You know, obviously his training program can be different too. My standard of a squat might be different than somebody else's. You know, I want to get to that deep knee flexion. I want to get there. Some people don't do that. Some people stop. Some people still believe that it's bad for the knees to bend the knees and get that low. Again, that's not my thinking. That's not my thought process, but that might be how they were trained before. So you might have to rewire them a different way. And you know it, and I know it. I mean, you don't program identical to how I do, so there's some different thought processes there. At the end of the day, the most important thing for getting high school athletes to the college setting is that they have some type of training age, that they've had a strength coach, that they understand the standard, the culture, that they've been held accountable to do things the right way, whatever they're being taught, and that's going to be the most important thing. Because again, we'll teach them just like a coach with a new playbook. Like their high school coach wasn't wrong for teaching them X, Y, and Z play and running a certain system. You know, neither am I, and neither is high school strength coach for doing that. But at the end of the day, to have that base and have that somewhat of a training age and some of a familiarity with what to do in a strength conditioning program and in a weight room, it's important for high school athletes, and hopefully we can continue to progress the field at the high school level.
Definitely. So in regards to the three volleyball players that you're talking about there, when you do make those regressions, how do you communicate that with them?
It's a good question. I'm thinking back on that one. I mean, it wasn't that difficult. I was like, hey, this wasn't working. You know, let's try X, Y, and Z and see how this looks first, and then we'll go back to this again. I was told that they're pretty proficient in their Olympic movements. So again, I'm not going to do anything wild with them. We went through I gave them Oli Tech day one, my mistake. I should have went right to goblet squat and just RDL bar tracing patterns with the barbell. That's what we did after that first day. And it wasn't a big deal. I mean, at the end of the day, I think that everybody wants to do what everybody else is doing, but they also don't. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
They want something individualized, but but at the same time, they don't want to feel like they're behind. But if you start to talk to them about, where they are and where they're going, like those three freshman volleyball players move much better than some of my veterans do, because I've had some more time with them to develop their movement patterns and slow cook them a little bit longer. I picked up the volleyball team last January 2020. So I had 8 weeks and then COVID hit. That was the most I worked with them. Then I got them in the school semester. And again, you have your issues here and there where training's kind of helter skelter with COVID. So I'd say the freshmen have had more of a foundational program than the veterans, because I'm not going to regress. We had 8 seniors on our volleyball team, which is a lot.
Right.
That's more than half the team, man. So I wasn't going to sit there, and I wasn't not. And again, I'm not going to hurt them, but I wasn't going to regress them. I need to get buy-in too. They're not going to believe in a program. You know, they've been cleaning and back squatting and doing a bunch of other things with their old strength coach. Then to some degree, I'm going to work with that until we start to build, you know, the system from the ground up from where I want it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So the freshman volleyball players were able to go through that a lot more than any of the other veterans, and you could just see their movement patterns. They just look much cleaner. They're a little bit more disciplined with it, and there's no knock on, you know, the vets. That's no knock on the previous strength coach. They just taught things a different way, and you know, I'm going to have more time and to establish what I want to do. And I'll have another class. That means we'll be able to build on it once again. So now they'll have some sophomores, some upperclassmen that now understand what I'm trying to do, and we'll have more time under the belt. And then you'll have the freshmen there, and you'll have a larger group of freshmen. So now more than the team is going to be doing that than what they were doing. So it's it's a good thing because you know, at the end of the day, you know, being able to stay somewhere. And Jamie, you remember this, I was in and out of ship quick. I was there for a year and a half. I'm coming on 3 years here, and you know, hopefully I'm here a few more years, and you start to see the maturation of a training program a lot more. I mean, I really didn't get to implement much at Shippensburg when it came down to tiering a program and developing the athletes long term. So
Yeah, there's something that comes to mind when we've been talking about this, like kind of building foundations, and it's the wider you build the base, the higher you can build the peak. And while it's oversaid, it still stands true, you know.
love it. I love that.
So we're about to conclude the first episode, but before we do so, we're going to play a game. Okay,
All
the
right.
game is
So
called Underrated, Overrated. Okay, and I'm going to
underrated, overrated. Okay.
yeah, I'm going to list a number of terms that relate to either health or training, and without you explaining, you have to tell me if it's underrated or overrated. Okay, in comparison to the general consensus.
Okay.
All right. So, coach, are you ready?
Yeah.
Push-ups,
Underrated.
jump rope,
I'm gonna say underrated.
static stretching,
Oh, context is so much better with this.
we'll come back to any surprising ones. Don't worry.
Static stretching. I'm gonna say I'm gonna say underrated because I feel like people are getting away from it.
I totally agree with that. 1 rep max testing,
Overrated.
wall sits,
I'm not a fan. Overrated.
calf raises.
Calf raises.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna say overrated on that one, but I do have my opinions on the ankle complex too. So
Yeah, I've never seen calf raises in any of your programs.
yeah, just because I mean, if you get triple extension, any type of Olympic movement,
And you said
you're,
that last time I asked.
you're sprinting, you're calf raising, you're doing X, Y, and Z. Yeah.
GPS tech,
I ooh, I think that's overrated. We do a lot of stuff here. We don't have any technology or very few. And I mean, I can track workload through Excel. I can do all that stuff. You just got to put in the time. We do CNS tracking. I mean, you start to correlate that with weight, you start to correlate that with the grip for CNS, you start to correlate that with their workload and their RPE. And we do some, we have a jump mat. So you start to correlate that with some of their peak averages, and you start to come up with you know, obviously a bigger picture on a daily. So I think the GPS is overrated, but much, much easier on us.
whey protein,
That's overrated from the general public standpoint.
conventional deadlift,
I like these. You got good ones here. I am going to go underrated because that would be a foundational movement for us to be able to clean for the floor.
okay, foam rolling,
This one falls in the same one as static stretching.
I know.
It's people are overvaluing this one now. If Mike Boyle hears this, he's probably going to disagree. I just think there's a time and a place. I think it's overrated. It's not going to prevent injuries.
Right. Look, Coach, thank you for being involved in my first episode. It's been a pleasure.
All right, Jamie, I really appreciate it, my man.